We've got roadworks going on in my street and the internet's been poor for a few days, so that's why.
I just got new internet as well, so mine might cut out as well.
Yeah, we'll try our best to get through this episode if we can. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 questions. Okie doke. How many points are Light Villa to be on at this stage of the season?
You are listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live.
Hello, welcome back to the Claret and Blue podcast. My name is Dan Rowlandson. I'm joined this morning bright and early by Patrick Rowe. Pat, it's been a while since you and me have done a show together. How are you? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, it's been a while. I can't remember the last time I was on here. Must have been like a pre-season one or something. But I haven't done any post-match ones, have I? But there's not been much to talk about with it.
Yeah, I ran a 10k the other day. My first one I've done for well over 18 months or so. I've really got out of the habit of doing stuff like that. So hamstring is still a little bit tight, to be honest. But yeah,
I've only just recovered. I did mine on Tuesday.
I did it really slow and steady, but after I finished, I was like, oh, that was difficult in parts. We're going to do a Q&A today. Obviously, it's the international break, so there's not massive amounts to talk about. We've still not heard anything as of recording this about Boubacar Kamara's injury, so hopefully that doesn't date the podcast whenever that does happen. Big sigh there from you. It's not great, is it? Villa saying, wish you a speedy recovery without any kind of information on how long he's out for, by the way.
That's what they did with Diego Carlos, isn't it?
We're assuming
it's like we have to sacrifice a win. If we get a win, we have to sacrifice one of our good players. So can we just wrap Buendia or Coutinho or Watkins in bubble wrap if we win the next game?
Then we won't win games. I've got 18 questions from social media on Twitter, YouTube, and a couple off Instagram as well. Some of these are kind of generic Aston Villa talking points, a few about Steven Gerrard and tactics and stuff like that. Do you want to start, Pat? I've sent you these list of questions. Do you want to start in the order that I've sent them to you, or do you want me to go random selection?
I haven't wrote anything down or anything, so I've just got them in front of me, so we can just go in whatever order you want to do, really.
The first one from Andrew Southall. He says, what is required, and is it even possible to get Aston Villa to be as good as the 80-82 team, i.e. win the league and Champions League? Is it money, a manager, or quality of players? Now, my initial reaction to that question was all three.
Yeah, all three. You probably need all three, but it's growing increasingly more difficult, isn't it, to be competitive in football without splashing 100 million every transfer window.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, like Newcastle have just bought that 50 million Isak striker. Looks good, but it's still not come together, and they're a point ahead of us. So, and like they're deemed to be having a good season and whatnot, but I think the positives from there are coming from their style of play, and that comes with the manager. I think Villa, although we're a point behind them, everyone's like issues with it as they're not really seeing a style of play. We transitioned from trying to dominate teams back to the early days of Gerrard. So yeah, I'm not really sure. You probably do need a combination of all three, and I'm not sure how many of those Villa have currently.
Argue that we've got money with the
we've got money. We've got money.
But you've got to invest it right. You've got to buy the right players. It needs to gel. Exactly. It needs to click. I don't know who it was talking about the other day, saying about a team of individuals versus an actual team, and it's the unit of the team that makes a side click together. It's all well and good buying 3 or 4 talented players for 50 million each, but they've got to click into a team and work together to actually achieve anything. I mean, Leicester City have given us hope. The fans that aren't of a side that is an elite club, a Man City, Liverpool, Man United, etc., that there is hope that a freak season can happen and you can win the league. That's part of me that reads that first opening question and thinks, are we ever going to win the Champions League?
Like I'd say, before I die, I want to see us win like a bit of silverware. Just a bit of silverware. I'd take a League Cup, never mind the Champions League or the Premier League. But yeah, in terms of the overall standard of football, I feel like there's just been a transition in the past few years. It's like Pep Guardiola's City and Liverpool trying to compete with them as well, where it's just a lot more top heavy, isn't it? And you get all this European Super League and whatnot, and it's just becoming more top heavy. So I think it's only going to get more difficult. And then you look at the teams around us improving. So just breaking into like the Champions League, as you said, is going to get more difficult as well, let alone winning it and competing with the super teams. So
yeah, even you've got the traditional top 6, and you've got the likes of us, Newcastle, West Ham, that all want to be up there, Brighton, Wolves. To even get into the top 8 feels like a difficult task at the moment. Never mind into European football, Champions League, and then you say once you get into it, you've got to compete and going all the way. It just sounds mental, doesn't it? The more we talk about it, the more I think we're never ever going to win the Champions League, or probably even get to it. Second question then from Blakey. This was on Instagram, I think. Favourite player so far this season?
See, if I said Watkins, I'll just get rinsed by like anonymous football accounts. Just
go
like
for it.
I don't want to say Watkins because he's been good, he's been solid, but obviously it's been difficult for him because I don't think we could pick him just because he's just had little to do because we just don't create anything. I think we're second bottom in terms of creation. My one would be Kamara. I just like watching him play football. It's a really nice thing to watch. And I'm going to be absolutely devastated if he's got any form of devastating injury. Because I've got a friend who's a physio, and he's a Wolves fan, and they've got that Sasha. I don't know how to say his.
The big tall striker,
big tall striker, yeah. And he went down off the ball at half time, and he grimaced. Then he was like, "Oh, that doesn't look good." He said it from a mile away. He looked at the Diego Carlos one and was like, "That doesn't look good. It's like off the ball landing." And then he messaged me when Kamara. I hadn't even taken it in. I thought it was a clash of knees or something. And he messaged me and said that doesn't look good at all. So that's just brilliant.
So in the same way that Villa tweet opposed saying speedy recovery, your mate saying that doesn't look good. That's also a translation for bad injury.
We signed 2 Champions League quality players, and they both go down within the first 7 games. And then we're back to the same squad that finished 14th last season. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
I just can't get over it. But yeah, watching him play football was a joy to watch if he is out for a prolonged amount of time now. He just looks Champions League quality, game on free transfer. Undoubtedly, we probably will have to sell him in the next 2 to 3 years if we don't progress.
Boo, Pat Rowe.
But we make a big I think it'd be between 60 and 80 million pound player. If he kept going the way he was, yeah, he'd be my player of the season. But it's a tough selection.
As you were talking there, I'm racking my brain through the other 12, 13, 14 players that have featured and thinking, oh, none of these really are standing out to me. So I've semi gone for Taro Mings as probably the second best performer of the season so far. I've done a few posts already, and I've seen others say the same of him, kind of back to his best and winning 100% of his duels and all those kind of things at the weekend. I've always liked Mings. I like to see him kind of fight back against the critics and stuff, which there's been
a lot of them.
Yeah, he's been deserved as well at times as well. Some of it, the criticism I've hit him, so for him to come back and start the season well when he was probably going to be displaced by Diego Carlos in the first place. And obviously now he's back in the side because of that injury anyway. But him playing well is good for Aston Villa and good for him personally as well. So that question, we've not started this podcast the best, have we really? We probably should have gone random. We've gone depressing, we'll never win a trophy, and then we can't even pick a favourite player. The third question is from James Child. He says, if you were to sign a new player in each position, so 1 defender, 1 midfielder and 1 forward, who would your players be? Now, I sent you these questions in advance of this podcast this morning in the hope that you might have done a bit of prep. You said at the start you hadn't written anything down, though. But have you got 3 names for me? How do we want to take this? Should we do realistic and...
in my head, I went realistic because no one wants to hear me say that I want Haaland to be wearing Claret. So I went with Diallo at the back to pair with Carlos in the long run, just like 2 physical centre-backs, comfortable in possession. Gerrard wants to develop this play. He's playing out from the back. That's probably a good way to start. And then I wanted Mateus Nunes in midfield before Wolves got him, or Enzo Fernandez or someone like that.
Yeah, I'd imagine he'll be there for a season or 2 and he'll be off to somewhere like Liverpool.
Yeah, dream one would be Jude Bellingham.
Yeah.
Come on, Jude. Come back to Birmingham. Please. I don't know where I'd go with this direction. I think when we first got promoted, there was rumours of us getting linked to like Rafael Leao. I don't know how to say his name. The AC Milan guy that's been linked with Chelsea. I think he's now like worth like 80 million. But that would be like a dream transfer. I think he can play up front or out wide. But then I didn't know where to go with an actual out-and-out striker. Ones we'd linked to, we've been never really like set the world alight. Really, in my opinion, they've had someone who's like Suarez, Raul Thomas. I thought they'd just have all the same problems that the current strikers at Villa have. We all talk about this 20-goal a season striker, pretty like elusive in the Premier League. But Danny Ings has done it, and we just can't supply him, and we can't supply Watkins because we can't create for him. So I think you could put a lot of people up front, and they'd have the same issues, to be honest.
Yeah, the 3 names I went for, and I went for the route of fancy, not to the extremes of a Haaland and a Jude Bellingham, but players that probably will never sign for Villa, but it'd be nice. I went Kilman for the centre half from another Wolves pick. I think he's 25. I don't think it would ever happen. I think he'll get a move outside of Wolves at some point, but I don't think it'll be us. Tielemans as the midfielder, someone who is obviously linked away from Leicester a lot in the summer just gone, and will be available in January and then on free in the summer if he doesn't agree with anyone in January. And then striker, I certainly don't see this happening happening, it would absolutely have to break the bank. Tammy Abraham, the return, bring him back, bring home Tammy, etc., etc. But you were right with what you just said before we revealed our names. It's the service behind the strikers that is the problem. Like you said, you could put Ronaldo or Messi up front in that team, and if you've got John McGinn and Ramsey behind them supplying them with absolutely nothing, no disrespect to those two, but it's clearly not working. It's difficult for anyone to score goals, so you could put anyone there, and you'd still have some of the same problems. I don't want to go with the next question because it's also a negative one. Let's go with a bit of a fantasy one from John Hayes. He says, if heaven forbid Aston Villa folded, keep it up with a positive theme of the podcast, who would you support instead? I'm intrigued to see what you say here.
My dad, when he was at school, he always tells, he's told me this story before. There was like a kid, they were like young, like very formative years when you're like in reception, whatever it was called back then. But like he was a massive Blues fan, and apparently he was like the bully of the school. And he tried to make my dad be a Blues fan. And he was like, you know what, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. So then my dad just became a Villa fan just to spite him. Like his dad didn't support Villa or anything. But
so that's where the Villa connection came from in your family. Your dad spited a bully at school.
And then so it's just anything else just doesn't feel right, does it? Like I have teams that I don't mind like watching, and if they're playing someone else, I'll be like, oh, I'd rather them win than the other team. Like, but I don't have another team that I have like such a soft spot for that I'd probably support. I don't even know if I'd like football if I didn't get interested in Villa, to be honest.
Yeah, agreed.
Probably be a glory hunter. It was, Man United, when everyone was back there, but I just couldn't see myself doing it, to be honest.
No, I couldn't. If Villa never existed in the first place, you wouldn't think I'm missing out on supporting Aston Villa, so you'd just go with whoever was the local team or whoever your family supported or whatever. But to have been with Villa for 27, 26 years and then suddenly go, right, they don't exist anymore, you've got to go and support somebody else. I wouldn't be able to support another Premier League side. Celtic Rangers, potentially going up to Scotland and supporting one of those instead, possibly. But again, not bothered about it. European side, potentially. My family were from Houso and I did some stuff for them a few years ago. Potentially go back there and watch them on a weekend instead. But if Villa didn't exist, I wouldn't then go, I'm going to be a Brighton fan now. I like the way they play, or an Everton fan because they've got similar values to Villa or whatever. I just couldn't do it. It'd be weird.
My cousins, like they stem from Liverpool, so that like my older cousin's a Liverpool fan, but his younger brother is a Villa fan, just like, and his dad was a Liverpool fan. I don't know why he chose Villa, but he just did. Yeah,
my whole family supported Villa as far as I know on my dad's side anyway. I've got some Albion fans on the other side of the family, but I certainly won't be able to go over there.
We don't speak to them.
yeah, don't see them anymore. Back to football related questions. One from Adrian. He said, how much money do you think the owners will throw away until they bought the project? That's quite a loaded question, really, in that they're implying that the transfers we spent money on aren't good enough because they're throwing away money. And then will the owners stop spending money or lose interest or sell the club or whatever? How do you firstly interpret that question, and what would your answer be to it?
Ooh, how do I interpret it? Well, my first impression, my first thought, Dean's 29 or 30, Danny Ings is 30, Coutinho's 30. Diego Carlos 29, but he's out for a year, going to be 30. Their win now moves. It's not long before you have to probably recycle these transfers and get kind of a team with an average age of like 32, can you? So yeah, these players are either at their peak now or approaching their peak or just past it, to be honest. How much they've splashed on the squad currently? You got 27 on Dean.
I think it's something like 400 million spent since they came to the club or something like that. And obviously we had to build a side when we got promoted. We spent a lot of money in the summer of 2020 with Watkins, Martinez, Cash, etc. We spent money on Coutinho, Dean in terms of wages and stuff, Kamara, Carlos. I'm sure I don't know whether the figures are correct because transfers are always overinflated, but even say 300 million as a massive kind of going underneath is still a hell of a lot of money. And for what? What have they got for that investment? A side that is now in the Premier League and should still be in the Premier League for the foreseeable and not be at risk of going down again, which isn't as easy as just saying, oh yeah, Villa won't be relegated because they're too good for that. Because look at somebody like Leicester sat rock bottom, and West Ham have struggled, and Everton. These sides should be good enough to stay up and can still find themselves in trouble. So yeah, they've got to start seeing something, whether that's silverware or top 10 finishes, European qualification, to see progress and keep investing money year on year. So kind of they'll stick around for as long as the football is good enough to deserve their backing, I guess.
There's like a weird like trade-off, isn't there? Because I think Villa are probably going to start getting results now on the run that we've got, but the style of play isn't going to be there that people are going to be happy with it. And I don't know if the owners would look at that in the same way, or they take the fact that Gerrard could just grind out 5 1-0 wins in a row. Oh, we've got Leeds away, Forest coming up, and what like that could feasibly be exactly like the Southampton game, where we walk away with 3 points, but people are still left with like a bad taste in their mouth after the game. And it's like, yeah, we won, but how long can we keep this up for?
At what
it
cost?
wasn't really great. And this doesn't look like a £300 million squad playing football. The game against Southampton looked like two teams that, like, I've read it on Twitter, like, relentlessly. It's two teams that didn't want the ball. We just didn't have really an identity going forward. We were really stagnant in the final third. We've got so much quality and so much creativity, but none of it comes through in our style of play at all. And it's quite worrying at times. So yeah, if that's what 300 million buys you, I don't know how long more we can keep throwing money at it and still thinking that's going to solve our problems, to be honest. Because there's a point in time where I was telling someone about it. It was like, next game, Bailey will probably be dropped, but probably start for Buendia or something, or sooner or later, or it'll swap Coutinho out. Sooner or later, you're going to have to give one of these players an extended run in the team to just like gain some momentum, gain some form. But I'm not, because it's never working and we're never clicking in the final third. I'm not sure anyone's ever going to get that run. And
yeah,
so it's all very short term and just grinding out results. But in the long term, I don't know how the owners would view it, to be honest, because Villa fans aren't happy. The fact that we've not really developed as a side after those signings is worrying. I'm wondering if there'll be another transition away from that, or they'll just keep going for that kind of method of transfers, to be honest. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
There's a few questions about tactics, so we can probably kind of put these together. First one from Bolg McTavish, which is a great name. He says, what are our tactics? Have they evolved and where are they going? AKA, do we have a plan? And then a follow-up from Regan Lineker McCarthy, which is, again, a great name. Will Steven Gerrard's tactics change in the foreseeable? So first of all, what are our tactics? And if they aren't good enough, will Steven Gerrard change them, do you think?
I'm actually resting my laptop right now on the book of Steven Gerrard's tactics, which I haven't read yet, which I probably should have. But it felt like when he first came in, you were just going to be met by like 3 banks of a narrow formation. You had that narrow front 3, forcing the ball out wide to the fullbacks, and then McGinn and Ramsey would go pressure the fullbacks and try and force like a turnover of possession in their half of the pitch. It looked solid. Everyone was working really well in for the whole system, the shape. We looked defensively solid, didn't we, against Palace, Brighton. We could have got a result against City if Carney had buried that chance. Liverpool, we were undone by a penalty decision. All those games are kind of the early days from the Gerrard era for me that I remember. Like Gerrard said, and he might have been guilty of like trying to do too much too soon, or whatever it was in that interview after Southampton. It seemed like he wanted to progress the team into a more, I think we were averaging like 63% possession. He wanted to progress the team into a more like dominant side and like model it on Liverpool or City, the bigger sides in the league. And it just didn't go to plan, didn't it? It felt like we sacrificed all our shape for the sake of trying to. I think he tries to create triangles in the final third with like Ramsey, the fullbacks, and one of the inside forwards, and it just leads to us having no midfield, doesn't it? Like the gaps against Bournemouth, Crystal Palace were just ridiculous. So he's probably had to bite the bullet there and sacrifice it. But I'm not sure where he goes from here, to be honest. I think he's going to persist with his 4-3-3 that's quite narrow. Everyone's calling out for a 4-2-3-1, but I don't know if that goes out the window now if Kamara's injured, or if you play Dendoncker and Louise. I don't know where he goes from it. I can't see a change of formation that dramatic. I think he'll just stick at it, and if he's getting 1-0 wins, he'll just go, I'm winning. So,
is that good enough for you as a fan? Do you take that? Are you happy if we win, but you don't?
I'm not going to lie.
It's the win ugly thing, isn't it? If you're winning and you're not playing well, does it really matter? I
mean, Villa winning on Friday did really improve my weekend. Like it did put me in a good mood. Like I couldn't find it in myself to be like, well, that was shocking. That was a terrible game of football. It was a terrible game of football, but
yeah, it was pretty drab, but we won.
We got 3 points. We're like up the table. I was just happy for that.
But long term, that isn't sustainable.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you're playing poorly, you don't keep winning. At some point, you play poorly and lose. But that Southampton game in isolation, we played better than that and lost. Or drawn a game. So to get over the line and win and get a much needed 3 points is kind of a good short-termism thing at the moment, but you won't be able to keep that up. If you're playing poorly, you don't win games consistently.
Yeah, exactly. I come back to the Spurs game at Villa Park last season. I thought that was one of the best halves of football we played under Gerrard in the first half.
Yeah.
Coutinho looked on fire. We lost 4-0. But yeah, that was nice football to watch at times, and it could have been a very different result, and Spurs got quite lucky, I thought. But yeah, it's that trade-off, isn't it? I think obviously it's a results-based industry, isn't it? So Gerrard would rather grind out the 1-0s, and Villa fans would rather win than not. But as you say, is it sustainable for the club to play this mind-numbing football at times for the foreseeable future? Because it is mind-numbing. There's no movement in the final third. When I was watching Southampton, Dean would get the ball, or Bailey would get the ball, or whoever was out wide. There'd be 3 players approaching them, of Southampton players, closing them down. Everyone's just stood looking at there, not making a run forward. And it's stagnant. Everyone's stood still, waiting for someone else to do a bit of a moment of magic or something. There's little flashes where Dean does make a run, or Ramsey makes a run in behind, or Watkins makes a run in behind. Or Buendia at the end. Buendia tried to thread a pass to Watkins, I think, or Ings. And I think it just got cut out. There's flashes of it, and the flashes that are exciting are when we're making runs and there's movement. But when there's not, which is the vast majority of the game, it is a tough watch.
This is off topic a little bit. After the Man City game, if we'd have played Leicester and beat them, would we have seen a better performance with more confidence against Southampton? Possibly. But now you look at it and just go, it's 4 points from 2 games. You've got a break now to recover. Play against Leeds and you play well and you win. And then you've got Forest as well, and potentially get something there as well. You could be looking at a mini run there of Villa getting 10 points from 12 available and playing well in a couple as well. And that really will change the mood.
Yeah.
Obviously, the flip side of that is if you come out of the international break and look cold and get beat by Leeds and Forest, Gerrard probably won't be here after that. So, yeah, we're on a knife edge at all times. It's going to go one of 2 ways. There are questions about Gerrard, and we'll come to those in a little bit. There's a question here. There's 2 actually from Matt Kendrick, who obviously isn't here. So I'm going to text him. I'm going to text him on air, and we'll wait for him to reply. The first one from Wally, which I like the name. What is Matt Kendrick having for his tea? Well, he actually put dinner, but I assume that means tea. Are you a breakfast, dinner, tea man?
I'm a breakfast lunch tea.
Lunch tea?
Lunch tea.
That makes even less sense.
No, that's always been breakfast, lunch, tea.
Surely it's breakfast, lunch, dinner is the opposite one.
I never used the word dinner.
Okay, so I'm breakfast, dinner, tea. I am, and I assume Kendrick's the same. So I'm going to text him and ask him what he's having for tea. And there was a second question asking why, I think it was from Omar, why is there only 1 tea in Matt? And he said it a few times. I think he said about, why is there only need for it? It still sounds the same with 1 tea or 2 teas, so why hog an extra letter? I think that'll be his answer. So I'm going to text him and we'll see what he replies with. I'll go to a football-related question for you from Daniel Clissett. Can we talk about the Villa women's fantastic performance against Man City? What a game that was. I don't know whether you saw any of it, but I know that Man City played Villa a couple of seasons ago and Villa looked nowhere near it. For them to start their season at Villa Park in front of a decent-sized crowd, the women doing the job and winning the game from 3-2 down. Great start to the season for them.
Yeah, solid start. Good attendance as well. I think it was over 6,000. I've seen 2 of the goals. One of them was unreal. Just, whipped it in, but she wasn't even facing goal at the time either. I think it was Daly. I got asked if I wanted to cover that game as well because Reach are starting to cover it. The Women's League a bit more this season, which is good. But I couldn't because I was already working, I think. But yeah, it's nice to see. And it's just kick-starting from the Euros, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've had a few questions before in the past about doing like a Villa women's podcast, but you and me haven't seen the game, so it's difficult and it's not right for us to try and wing our way through it, and we don't want to do it an injustice. And we have talked about potentially doing a Villa women's podcast maybe once a month and getting somebody in from the women's side, or
we guess whoever goes and covers it.
Whoever's covering it from a work perspective, getting them on maybe to do like a monthly review or something. So it's we've talked about it, but there's no kind of imminent plans for that. Villa fan 07. I assume 07 is the year they were born, so that makes them very young, doesn't it? That makes them 15 years old.
That
15-year-old Arsenal player, that made even me feel old. I bet that made you feel old, didn't it?
Made me feel old.
Yeah, I think I felt that.
I was on a France trip with school when he was born.
Cool. He said, in hindsight, were the transfer we made a massive mistake in terms of quality and quantity? Again, it feels a little bit like a loaded question, a massive mistake. I don't know whether I'll go that far because Kamara and Carlos getting injuries is unfortunate.
It's
if they were both fit and raring to go, I think they're 2 good, very, very good signings.
Yeah.
Coutinho is obviously going to be question marks over his age and the wages that we're paying him, and the fact that he's not been on form for however long. I think something like 1 goal contribution in 18 games or something I saw after the weekend, which is, I mean, it's poor for any player, never mind somebody of his ability. Dendoncker, I think, is a pretty smart signing, and Bednarek is a backup because of the Carlos injury, I think, and replaces Courtney Hall. So, you know, nothing really more than that. Or Gustinson, a backup left back. Yeah. Is it the window we were hoping for to spend 150 million and sign a big name, you know, an Isaac player to play up front for 60 odd million? No. Could it have been good enough to bridge the gap and get Villa into the top half? Possibly, yes. So would I say massive mistake? I don't think so. But room for improvement, yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a massive mistake, no. As you say, the vast majority, apart from Kamara and Carlos, the others were just like squad depth, just putting out fires, weren't they? We might have to see a lot more of Dendoncker now if Kamara is down.
Yeah.
But yeah, you couldn't write the fact that you buy 2 players, you focus your transfer window on these 2 players, and you work fast to get both of them in early in the window, and then they both go down with devastating injuries within the first 8 games.
And Kamara isn't confirmed yet, but we're assuming it's going to be at least a couple of months.
Devastating. I actually can't wrap my head around it. Like,
I'd be gutted to lose him for 3 or 4 weeks. Never mind 6 months.
Cash has also got that hamstring injury. And didn't he miss like the end of the 2020-2021 season with a hamstring injury that just like kept going on and he couldn't recover from it?
Yeah.
And I know Young's good, but how long can a 37-year-old keep up that form? Like, it's gonna. I know this break's gonna be good for him, but I think the games come thick and fast in October. Before the World Cup, the decision to let Kane Kessler-Hayden and exile Gilbert is probably going to come back to bite us at some point as well. But yeah, I wouldn't call it a mistake. You just can't account for that kind of thing happening in football, to be honest. It's just terrible luck.
Well, we kind of have accounted to an extent, haven't we? Because Kamara getting injured is Dendoncker and Carlos getting injured is Bednarek. So we can't.
What I found weird though is that when Kamara went off injured, it looked as if Dendoncker was playing as like an 8 and Luiz was still in his number 6. And I was like, surely, I know Dendoncker has played there for Wolves and he isn't like a genuine CDM. Like, out of the 2 players, you push Luiz further forward, and it just seemed to me like Luiz was in his usual role. Maybe Gerrard just wanted someone he knows can play there. But yeah, it just seemed a bit hard.
I've got a quiz question for the next question. This is from AVFC agent Gerrard, who said, the last Villa player to score a hat-trick. Now, I did send you these list of questions before, but I purposely left this one off so you couldn't go away and Google it. So can you remember the last Aston Villa player to score a hat-trick?
In the senior side?
Yes, for the senior men's side.
Cameron Archer?
Cameron Archer against Barrow?
Surely it's Cameron Archer against Barrow.
Well, I haven't got the answer for this from the guy that asked the question, but I did message AVFC Stato and I said, it's easier for me to message you than it is to Google it because you'll have the answer far quicker than I'll be able to find it. Yeah. So he sent me the list of Aston Villa hat-tricks in order of date in the top division since 1993. He said, if you want to be picky, it's technically Cameron Archer against Barrow, though I've only got Premier League here. So technically, you are right. Cameron Archer was the last player to score a hat-trick.
My mind went to Ollie Watkins against Liverpool, but it's Archer, isn't it?
Yeah, the correct answer in terms of the Premier League is Ollie Watkins against Liverpool, the 4th of October, 2020, at Villa Park. Can you remember the one before that? Testing your knowledge, this is 2015, and then the one before that is 2013.
2015 has to be Benteke, QPR.
Yeah, Benteke, QPR. Can you remember the one before that?
Surely it's Benteke against Sunderland.
Correct, yeah. Benteke against Sunderland.
Yeah. That's one of my favourite games. Ron Vlaar's screamer.
Yeah, Benteke Sunderland. 29th of April 2013. Another April hat-trick there. 6-1 I think that was. So thanks to AVFC Stato for the knowledge on there and AVFC agent Gerrard for that question. While we were doing that quiz question, which I've probably had to edit down because that took a long time to get through, but good knowledge from you did get it. Matt replied, and then he sent me a voice note. So I'm going to play the voice note now and I'll edit that into the podcast and make it sound nice. And if it sounds rubbish to you, I'll just read out what he said. Yeah. So let's play this voice note and see what he says.
Hello, Daniel. In response to your question of what I'm having for my tea, I'm going to my in-laws and having a buffet-style tea because they're putting on a little wake following the Queen's funeral. Sausage rolls, pork pie, a few crisps, a few sandwiches. And your other question was I don't know why the two are related, to be honest, but the other question was, why is my name spelled with one T rather than two? My dad can't spell, basically. My dad went to register my birth many years ago and thought Matthew was spelled with two T's rather than one, to just put one on the birth certificate. And I'm unique. All right, see you later. Bye-bye.
So there we go. That's why there's only one T. Matt Kendrick's father couldn't spell the name. It also gives away that we're recording this very, very early on Monday morning. So yeah, buffet tea, nice. Do you know what you're having,
nice.
by the way? It's very early, isn't it, to be talking about what we're having for tea?
I haven't even had breakfast yet.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get back to football then. Let's get rid of these ones off my list. Let's stick with a bit of nostalgia actually before we get into the last couple about Steven Gerrard. From Anthony Davis, he says, growing up, my favourite player was Angel because I thought he was a goal machine, and at my second Villa game, he scored the winner. Who was your favourite player growing up and why? Now, how old are you for reference?
I'm 23.
You're 23. I'm 26. Yeah, 26. I was born 95, so you were 98?
98, yeah.
98. Okay, so we're going to the football in the mid 2000s, I guess. So my kind of first season ticket was O'Neill's first season, I think. I had a very kind of slim interest in Villa before I actually started going. I'll let you go first, but that's the kind of reference in terms of our age for people watching, while we're not going to pick somebody like Stan Collin or whatever. We're not old enough for that.
Nah, mine, like you say, when I was growing up, I didn't have a season ticket until the Paul Lambert years. And I chose a terrible time to start getting one, and that's why I didn't carry on. Well, my dad just was like, we can't afford to do this. It's just terrible. It's like not worth ruining our weekends for. But yeah, like, I always thought it was great going to Villa. I'd go to Villa a lot. I just wouldn't have a season ticket. I think my first game was an FA Cup game against Burnley, and Kevin Phillips scored. I think we had a goal disallowed as well, but I just thought it was great. I just thought it was the best place in the world. Went from there. My first shirt I got, well, not my first shirt. My first name I had on the shirt was Barros, and then he literally left a few like weeks after. And my dad, I think my dad went and bought it when O'Neill came in, and then like he went to it, and he watched the car drive past, and came back with it and had Barros on the end. And then I refused to go to the Villa in it, so we tried to hairdry his name off, like get a hairdryer on it. And I was like, I'm not going if his name's on there. I hate him.
Love that.
But I quickly, warmed to John Carew, but he wasn't my favourite. My favourite was Agbal Lahore. I just thought he was great. I loved how fast he was. I loved the number 11. And he'd always be on my shirt. On those, I think it was the away kit with like the blue pinstripes with 32 red on. I got his name on that one. His like Nike Mercurial boots as well. He used to wear like lime green. I just thought it was great.
Yeah.
I think I remember him scoring. The first goal I watched him score was like a terrible, terrible goal against Wigan Athletic. And he just like bundled it in, and we'd gone 1-0 down to an Emil Heskey goal as well. And I was just like, this is it. This is prime. And I was like 7. But yeah, it was Gabby scoring against Blues. And then like still growing up when he went through his rough patch and whatnot, I was still quite young, and I didn't like read into the news as much. I just never understood why anyone disliked him, but you start to read a bit more about it now, but I still have a soft spot for him.
Gabby's a good shout. We're similar-ish in age. When I started going would have been around that O'Neill time as well, like I just said. So Gabby, Ashley Young, another one. Absolutely love John Carew, Barry, Milner. Real soft spots for. But going back a little bit earlier than that, Larson and Melberg were the two playing together. Big headers. I didn't play a lot of football when I was a kid, but always liked going in for a tackle and going up for big headers and stuff with me big fat head. So Larson powering up from the centre, from the halfway line, knocking back every goal kick and stuff, winning every header. Headers from corners and stuff as well. Yeah, always at the back, rock solid. Melberg as well. Good, great player.
Great beard.
Scoring goals, great beard as well. Yeah, so jealous of the beard. I'd love Mel. We tried to get Melberg on the podcast at some point, but he didn't fancy it. So yeah, Larson would be my pick. That goal against Ajax. I don't know what year that was in the was that Europa League? Yeah, Europa League. Yeah. That would have been 2007, 8, something like that. Yeah. Great memories. So Larson or Melberg for me. I'll go.
Special mention to Marlon Harewood.
Really?
No reason to like whatsoever, but just did really like Marlon Harewood.
Yeah.
Feed the hare and he will score.
Will he?
Maybe. 1 in 10.
We'll go one kind of podcasty related question before we finish with the Gerrard chat. So if anyone's tuning in to this for Gerrard questions, thanks for sticking to the end for it. These were kind of semi-random order. From Shimmy Recordings, who said, can you host a fan phone-in podcast in the future? It'd be a great way to interact with your subscribers and have good debates. This is probably a question for me more so rather than you. There's kind of twofold the answers to this question. Logistically, difficult to get people recording at the same time. Is one part to it. Obviously, we've done a Q&A here asking for questions on different social media channels. We've narrowed it down to 15, 20 questions, whatever it was, and we can kind of do that in our own time and get people's questions together. So do a fan phone in and have 15 to 20 people all be able to record their kind of 5-minute segment at the same time, where it doesn't take up an entire day for me to jump on and record with people, is also logistically difficult. Won't be able to do it live because I'll be worried about people coming on and being jokers or
specky weirdo.
Exactly.
Shut your mouth.
I love that. Yeah, just being abusive or lots of swearing or whatever. Like I wouldn't want to be censoring people's football's opinions just because I disagree with them. But having people on that I haven't kind of vetted, I guess, to not come on and be racist or whatever is difficult. So it would take a lot of work. But it is something that we've talked about and something that I would like to try and do. It's just organising the logistics of it. The only other thing is the technical side of it as well. Have they got a working webcam? Is their audio going to be okay? Have they got a decent
like talk
connection?
Sport
there? Yeah, just audio. Yeah.
Worked with Matt's phone call there, like it did work.
Yeah, like a voice note. Yeah, I mean, I know Neil from the For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast has done a phone-in episode recently, so I assume this is where this kind of questions come from. They've seen it elsewhere. So something we've definitely spoken about before, and we will try and do it at some stage. It would be nice to do it with cameras and stuff and get, you can put like 8 people on these StreamYard chats. So to get people on at the same time would be good as well and have them chat amongst each other. But again, doing that and trying to hope that no one says anything offensive or anything is difficult. So yeah, that's the last kind of non-football question I've got. The other two are about Steven Gerrard. So there's one long one and one short one. We'll start with the long one. And we said at the start of this podcast, which to me has felt quite upbeat. I felt like we've laughed a lot through this and we've had a good time recorded it.
In the last 5 questions.
Yeah, a lot of kind of negative questions and negative topics, but hopefully we've tried to make it semi-entertaining at least. But this question comes from Grim Reaper.
This was always, it's going to go in one direction.
So yeah, you might expect where this is going. Do you really believe Gerrard is the man to take us forward? I feel there's a lot of fans that are only looking at Gerrard game by game and not at the bigger picture. He has not been good enough, and Newcastle, Brighton, Brentford have already overtaken us, not just in position, but by their style of play and identity. And it's going to be even tougher to fight for a European place with these progressive teams doing much better than us. Each year we don't progress, it's going to become harder to fight for Europe. In my opinion, the summer was extremely underwhelming. I feel really disconnected with the club. They've increased the prices of nearly everything, and the funny thing is the performances on the pitch are a joke. So again, quite a loaded, heavy kind of negative opinion there from the Grim Reaper, which, you expect nothing less. But a lot of things in there, in an alternative universe, that's a comment I've probably written to a podcast somewhere. Yeah. Maybe not that extreme, so I don't agree with everything there, but I've spoken before about that feeling, that disconnect with the club when things aren't going right and just feeling all kind of down and negative about it all. So, I don't want to kind of poo-poo the opinion completely. But the main question there, I guess, is do you really believe Gerrard is the man to take us forward, and are we doing enough to show progress? So what do you think of Steven Gerrard so far, almost a year in now?
Obviously, there's big doubts surrounding him, isn't there, which are completely justified and whatnot, and people are allowed to think that. But I liked his interviews after the Southampton game. I liked him opening up about Mings. I liked him. Okay, I think people probably look at that Mings now and go, "Oh, that makes probably sense."
Worked, yeah.
But if you had said that at the first time, maybe we wouldn't need to have all this noise around the situation, would we? I like how he opened up about trying to maybe do too much too soon, trying to run before we'd even started walking type thing. There is like a way for him to I don't know how to word it, like he's willing to change type thing. But it's where you go from here. Yeah, compromise. He's not he's not too stubborn to, no, this is how we're doing it my way. If it doesn't work, I'll just go down with the ship. It's just where we go from here, to be honest. Like, fans are only going to settle for this, as I said, I think he's used the word progressive somewhere there. And we're not a progressive side right now, are we? We are a makeshift side. Yeah, you can grind out the results now, but it's not sustainable, as we've said. So the next bit for me is quite a big deal. What he does now, how he works with the team, how he develops this, and moves on from this, because you can't just switch back. Like, okay, we've had a few results. Now we're going to go back to Gavin 60% possession, doing nothing with it, 0.3 XG or whatever it was, and just be in this endless loop of get a few results because we sit back and counter teams, and like, lock the door, and then try and be more expansive and get absolutely blown to smithereens. I understand the feeling disconnected from the club, but I did enjoy the win the other day. I did feel connected with the club again. Like watching JJ tap that in, I loved it. I loved the celebrations. I loved Mings the whole game. The passion, it was all there for me. I loved the post-match scenes as well.
Do you think we've got the players, or Gerrard's got the players to play the way he wants to play? Do you think that's what his comments are alluding to, that we're trying to change too much here at one go and we're not ready for it? And when you've lost Kamara now for however long, and Diego Carlos, when you've signed players to improve the squad and now they're not available, that's just bad luck to a certain extent. But I'll say what I've said a million times before, a good coach should still be able to get better out of the players that we've got. Yeah,
100%. Obviously our squad shouldn't be floundering down in 15th, 14th.
And neither should Leicester's and West Ham's and Everton's. That's just the nature of the Premier League.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's obviously not clicking the way he wants it to, but there was time for us to sign extra players if he wanted them. I'm not sure. Like, we did sign, obviously, Den Donker and Bednarek, but as you said, the underwhelming thing there, it wasn't the transfer window many had hoped for. I thought, personally, we'd break the bank and break our transfer record on a midfielder, like a number 8. But it never came to fruition. But yeah, I can see why people are underwhelmed, but I don't know. I don't know where to go with it, to be honest. I have to cut that bit out, but I don't know where they go from it with this.
I think all you've said is fair, and the mood very much changes quickly with results. And if you get 2 wins out of the next 2, and you've come back from the international break strong, and people look fit and ready to go, the mood changes, and we're talking about 10 points from 12 games, and really trying to turn the corner. But like I said earlier, it is on a knife edge, that a couple of bad results and it's Gerrard out again, isn't it? That's where we are. We're going to flip flop between the two, and it's Gerrard in, Gerrard out. I'd like to see a bit more consistency in terms of performance and results, to say, all right, let's forget all the manager nonsense. We know he's going to be here till the end of the season, or he's going to have 3 years or whatever it's going to be. Football doesn't work like that, but wondering whether he's going to be sacked after a defeat or whether he's going to be here for another 3 games after a win, it's not a great place to be, is it?
As I say, if we win, but it's the same performance as Southampton, I think Villa fans still see through the cracks of everything. Like, there's been a lot of comparisons to like the wins under Steve Bruce, and it's just like, is it paper and over cracks and whatnot? I don't know. I think Villa fans want to see more than just, obviously they want results, but they want to see more than that. They want to see a return on their support, the price increases that has happened this season, the investment in the squad, the fact that Christian Purslow has pushed so heavily for continual progress. I think there's a broad definition of continual progress. And yes, it's about going up the table above 14th, and or was it 11th we finished under Dean Smith. Also the style of play, I think is intertwined into that. It's not just, we need to get results. Like Burnley finished, what did they finish, like 9th one season. There needs to be a style of play that rewards a £300 million investment. So I think fans are looking for that as well as results.
And the final question for this podcast is from Connor Wolf. Great surname, if that's real, by the way, Wolf. Simple question. Do you think Steven Gerrard will be Aston Villa manager after the World Cup break?
No, because he's going to be England manager after Gareth Southgate gets sacked.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I do. I think we'll continue to grind out results. It probably won't be pretty, but I do think he'll be the manager, yeah. It's only, when do we break up for the World Cup? November? Is it end of November?
End of November, yeah.
Yeah, so there's an international break. That gets you October. There's good fixtures in October, and I think that gets enough credit in the bank to get past the World Cup, unless it goes terribly wrong.
I think if we'd have lost against Man City and not beaten Southampton, I think there would have been every possibility he would have been sacked in this international break, and this podcast could have been the Gerrard has been sacked podcast. Whereas now it's a Q&A because we've kind of done okay and we've got something else to talk about instead. So I think he's earned the right to still be here in charge after the World Cup, after the last couple of games we've had. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 league games between now and the World Cup break. So there's 24 points available. How many points do you think we need to get to have considered it be worthy of still being here? Like you said, if it's a disaster and we get 6 points from 24 or 4 points from 24, something ridiculous like that, we win one of the 8. And yeah, I think it's right that he'll be sacked by then. Yeah. I think there's enough good games there. Leeds, Forest, Fulham, Brentford, Newcastle, even to a certain extent, Brighton. We'll see how their new manager gets on. That there should be 4 wins there out of 8.
Well, they're defining games, aren't they?
This is the period to save his job, effectively.
They're defining games because they're teams you need to be finishing above if you're going to tick the box of continual progress. So you've got to get double figures minimum from those games in terms of the points. And I wouldn't say you have to win every single one because that's just like, that's not how football works, is it? In the Premier League, especially. Like shock results happen, and wouldn't even be a shock if you lost any of those. Obviously, they're all good, solid teams. No one knows how Brighton are going to be after Potter's left.
Probably the same, probably better.
Newcastle have been fairly underwhelming, but their style of play is, as I've said, it's quite impressive at times. It's not just hasn't come together, but as we know, it always comes together when people play Villa. It'll be the game. It all comes together for them. Forest, that is a must-win. Like, you have to beat Forest. They are there for the taking at the minute. Like, they're defensively, they're quite bad. It's just not working for them.
There's only 3 home games in that period, which concerns me a little bit. There's a lot of away games to go there. Obviously, Leeds and Forest are both away next.
Yeah, I always get stressed out when we're on TV as well, because they're not Saturday games, because we don't have a Saturday 3 p.m. kickoff until like January, do we?
Yeah, at home.
I always get quite stressed out when we're on TV. It's our first game back Liverpool on Boxing Day as well.
Yeah, that's a 3 o'clock kickoff at Villa Park as it stands, but I don't know whether that'll get changed. Yeah, Liverpool, Tottenham, Wolves are the 3 after the break. I think to answer the question, it's a simple question, so there's a simple answer. Do you think Joel will be here after the World Cup? I think the answer is yes. I think if he is here after the World Cup, he'll probably be here for the remainder of the season, unless the back half of the season is an absolute disaster. But I think you've got to get 4 wins at least out of the next 8 Premier League games before the World Cup. And if you chuck in a couple of draws there, you've got Chelsea at Villa Park, Man United at Villa Park, you've got the Cup game as well, which again it's Man United, but I would like to see us progress in that as well, because I want to see us go all the way in the trophy competition. I think there should be enough credit in the bank to say, right, you've earned the right to still be Aston Villa manager. If you've won 2 games out of 8 and lost the others, then we'll probably be talking about Steven Gerrard being sacked at Christmas, but we'll talk about that if and when it happens. I think that's all the questions I got noted down. So thanks to everyone who contributed and led the discussion for this podcast. The final comment I had was from a Twitter DM from Darren Lashford, who said, "Hi, I just wanted to say I think your podcasts are great. My missus has got to the point now where she's fed up of hearing your voice because she's always in the car when I play the Villa podcast. Keep it up and good luck." So I just want to apologise to, was it Darren? Yeah, Darren's missus, who's probably been sat in the car for the last hour thinking, when is this rubbish going to end? Apologies for our dull voices droning on. But hopefully the rest of you enjoyed this Claret and Blue podcast. Pat, thank you very much for the hour of your time this Monday morning. For those that are watching this afterwards, get involved, answer your questions. Give your answers to these questions as well in the comment section on YouTube below, and I'll read through those as always. We might be back with another podcast later in the week, but if not, it'll be next week, looking ahead to the Leeds game. Thank you very much for watching the show. Thanks, Pat, for your time as always, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you for listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, up the Villa.